Gurubhyo Namaha. Atra Punyakshetre, Kashi Kshetre, Mahadevam Maheshwaram Prati Kinchit Vaktum, Avakasham Praptavati Atra Upasthita, Aham Atmanam Ativa Dhanyam Manye, Atra Indika Ayojakebhyaha, Mama Gambhiram Kritagnatam Nivedayami. I'm extremely privileged to be here in Varanasi to speak on Lord Shiva. My topic is, the first one, the beginning, please. Yes, the previous one. Is that okay? Can you hear me now? Yeah, I'm sorry, I was speaking very softly. So I will do a very quick presentation. I will take a minute or two on each slide. And Professor Kanakaraj Ishwaran has given a beautiful introduction to Manikkavacagar and explained all the main points. So I can be very quick. I just have a lot of colorful slides to make it a little more interesting for you all. The next one, please. This is the scheme of presentation. It'll probably take a minute or two on each topic about what characterizes Shaivism in Tamil Nadu. And then what is the position of the Thirumurai, which has already been explained just now. And then where does Manikkavacagar fit into the scheme of the Thirumurai. And then a few words about his work, Tiruvachakam. And then I focus on two specific poems, that is the Shiva Puranam, which is the first hymn, and Tirupochunam, which is a folk style song, and that is it. The next one, please. So Shaivism in Tamil Nadu is centered around the Nataraja Tattvam and Lord Nataraja and Chidambaram, which is said to have begun in the early centuries of the Common Era. The symbolism, the artistic representation, the cultural evolution, how it has impacted dance and music, and so many aspects of Tamil culture is a very vast subject on its own. There you see, usually Lord Nataraja and the Ananda Tandavam is always with Goddess Parvati, known as Shivakameshwari in Chidambaram, beside him. And there you can also see the sages Vyagrapada and Patanjali on the right side. So that is as a shot of, next one please. The Thirumurai are 12 books of sacred literature. They are not just devotional poetry, because there is a lot of sanctity attached to the Thirumurai. It is part of ritual worship in the Agama tradition in Tamil Nadu. Every Shiva temple and other temples also have Thirumurai being chanted to the Lord 6 times a day, starting from early morning. The trained singers of the temples are called Oduars. Odal is like reciting. It has also been set to music, and it is beautiful music. It is particularly relevant because I'm far away from Tamil Nadu now, and Carnatic music is very famous all over the world. But most people forget that the origins of classical music in Tamil Nadu begins with the Tamil Isai or the Tevaram and the Tirumurai music, which is really very ancient, whereas Carnatic music, which is it is a natural evolution and development of the Tamil Isai. Which is more like about 400 years old, 500 years old. But we are talking of Thirugnana Sambandar, who is credited, he is considered an avatara of Murugan, and that Shiva himself blessed him to be born on the earth to revive Tamil literature and music. The first three are famous. These are the typical images that come to one's mind when we speak of the Nalvar and the Mover. Mover is the threesome and the Nalvar are the 4. And the first three, Thirugnana Sambandar is 6th and 7th century. Tirunavukarasar was a later contemporary. Sundaramurti Nayanar lived in the 8th century, and Manikkavacagar was in the 9th century. Now the first three composers were well-trained musicians, where they were trained, they were gifted, they were divine. So they composed Tamil Isai, that is, the words came out set to music. So we can see it, and it is amazing. It is a very vast body of literature, and the kind of alliteration and the edugai monai and the repetition of the same syllables is simply amazing. And they are set to proper ragas. There was a particular way in which they were sung, and it largely continues to modern times, although because of the antiquity, they may have changed in the form in which they are sung, but there is a living tradition that continues it to this day. Now, Manikkavacagar is a little different because he did not compose his hymns, his poetry set to music. His style is known, the next one please. about the origins of Manikkavacagar. He is said to have been born in a village called Vadavur to the south of Madurai, from a family that was known to be very erudite and very scholarly, and individuals of great integrity and illustriousness, from which the king regularly appointed ministers. They were called Amatya Brahmanas. And by the time he was about 17 or so, he was appointed as an Amatya by the Pandya king and invested with great authority and powers. We also realized that an Amatya was somebody who would carry out any kind of project or any task that the king gave. A minister or a mantri was more of a counselor, but an Amatya was also invested with the powers to carry out his commands. And he was given the title of Tenuwan Brahmarayan. Tenuwan is the title of the Pandya king. It means that he was a southerner and he was associated with the Pandya court. But despite, next one please, despite having great authority and seeing a lot of material success at a young age, he was not satisfied. There was a deep discontent and a searing quest for Shiva Tattva and to attain Lord Shiva in him. This is a quotation from the Arthashastra, which I found. I thought it was very nice to have it here, so we can appreciate what kind of qualities the king would look for in appointing a minister. So it's very incisive. It's Kautilya Arthashastra. So I just have it up there in my paper and the slide. Next one, please. So there were a series of misunderstandings with the king because he was not able to focus on the task given to him. He was looking for Diksha under a Shivajnani. So the story goes there were several miracles which showed the king that the greatness of Manikkavacagar and that he should not be punishing him for his failure in carrying out his royal duties. But at some point, Manikkavacagar got fed up with the material life and he left the kingdom in search of, he undertook Diksha with a guru and left in search of the truth. And he was given the name Manikkavacagar by his guru because he uttered such gems that were, the verses he uttered were such gems. The picture on the right is from the temple architecture. We have a lot of it in the south where you have these painted artwork on all the gopurams and vimanas. The central picture reminds us that the tradition holds that Lord Shiva himself came to take down dictation of Manikkavacagar's verses because they are held in such reverence. Next one, please. The Tiruvachakam, there are two works. The Tiruvachakam is 51 hymns of varying lengths. And the Tirukkovayar is about 400 verses. Professor Ishwaran also mentioned Aham and Puram style of poetry. Aham is very personal, very internal, very emotional, close to one's heart. So it generally dealt with love poetry and bhakti and love poetry. This is coming from the Sangam age, from the early centuries of Tamil literature. So that continues in bhakti literature as the Jivatma's yearning for the Paramatma, which is Madhura Bhakti in different forms in different parts of the country. We have this theme. The motifs of the poetry are also taken from the earlier literature. So this is one of the reasons we have this huge genre of bhakti love poetry is because of the literary aspects also, not only the emotional aspects, which truly represent the focus and the one-pointed search that the Jivatma has for the Paramatma. But there are also a lot of literary things, technical things in the poetry itself that connect them. The Puram literature, of course, is more of soldier and martial victory, etc. So coming to Tiruvachakam, the style also, the earlier poetry had that rhythm and beat of a musical composition. They chose different types of verse. There are names for that, Kalipa, Vanjipa and such things. But Manikkavacagar's preferred style was the Ahaval, which does not have a restriction on the number of lines. There is a certain grandness to the saying. It is not like normal prose that we speak. It is different. It is verse. But it doesn't insist on the kind of rhythm or the repetition or the line length that the Venba and the other earlier styles require. Also, Whereas the earlier, the Tevaram hymns were set to certain pun and certain style of singing, Manikkavachagars were not. They have been, in recent centuries, in the intervening centuries, they have been set to music and sung, and I have a few samples, just take a minute or two. The point here, the main thrust of my paper, where I have written in detail, is to show, as Subramanya Bharati, the Tamil poet, who last year we celebrated the centenary year, he has said that Mother India speaks in 18 languages, but her thought is one. So the focus of my paper is to show from Manikkavachagar's works how the ideas, the concepts, and the Sanskrit phrases from the different darshanas are echoed in his work. I have a few samples here. Next one. The Ahaval style can run from 3 to 100 lines. Many of Manikkavachagar's hymns, of the 51, they have 90 lines, 100 lines, 200 lines. That's the kind of, that's the size, body of work that he had done. Next one, please. And whereas the Tevaram writers spoke of the exuberance of their bhakti for Lord Shiva and the glory of Lord Shiva, in Manikkavachagar's verse, he was, at 17, he was considered a great scholar. He had studied all the Shastras and he was very erudite. In his poetry, we find the ideas are organized from a philosophical standpoint. He seems very clear in his mind. The first hymn, Shiva Puranam, the word may sound like Puranas, or, we hear so many Shiva Puranam is there in Tamil and Sanskrit. We expect it to have all those stories of Tripura Samhara and all the wedding Parvati and all these stories. But it's, to my surprise, the first hymn is very philosophical. Here he uses the word Purana to show that Lord Shiva is more ancient than anything you can think of. Now I have these slides here. I have underlined the words where you can see the Sanskrit word. Namah Shivaya. It comes from the Sri Rudram. And then this book, in his Upanishadic references, we can find a lot of Upanishadic quotations to substantiate the concept that Manikkavachagar is speaking about. But I have a few samples here, and I think anybody can, at a glance, understand how it is replete with these concepts. So, Ekan, Anekan, and then Eko Deva Sarva Bhuteshu, Guda Sarva Vyapi, Sarva Bhutatma. The next one, please. This is Vegam Keduttanda Vendan Adivelga. There he says he stops, or he arrests the tempo or the momentum within the heart. So here he gives the example of Yogas Chittavritti Nirodha. So it is basically the mind and the heart that is not able to be calm, to be tranquil. So it is the Lord within who can control that. So it's these kind of multifaceted references. Then the words also, the old Tamil I wanted to demonstrate, it is whenever we come from Tamil Nadu, we speak of these things, then the Tamil Sanskrit apposition is a relevant issue which we cannot really evade. But the more we study, the more we go into it, ceases to be an issue. So that is the only thing I can say, that people who say we don't want Sanskrit, learn Tamil, I say please learn Tamil then, 60%, and then you'll come to all this and there's no problem. It solves the problem. So I am a Sanskrit scholar, I am not a Tamil scholar, but I have no problem with the concept of addressing Tamil to the negligence of Sanskrit. Even that is fine, because this is where we head. So he says, initially I found Karan Kuvivar was difficult, but Kara is Kara, like hand, Kara Malaka we say. There is a place where in a different poem he refers to everything seeming as clear as a Nelli Kani in the palm. So that is like Karamalakam Iva Vishwam, that Karamalakavatu Vishwam from the Bhagavad. So we have a lot of phrases, sir. And other words also. For Mukta becomes Mutta, Nastika is Natika, and so many words like that. Vikirtan you mentioned. Vikirta. Lord Shiva is addressed as Vikirta, is one of the noblest forms of addressing, because what is Vikara? The whole world is a Vikara of Shiva. Going back to Bhartruhari and the Vakyapadya, where we say Vikara and Parinama, whether it is different or whether it is the same. The next one. So we have a lot of examples like that. Ishan, Deshan, Tejan is Deshan, and Mayam, and then Devan, so many words. So the old Tamil is, in fact, the Natya Shastra mentions in the music section, it mentions Manipravalam. Sorry, not the Natya Shastra. Abhinava Guptacharya mentions that Manipravalam is very popular in South India. So I'm sure that he is referring to the Thirumurai and the Divya Prabandhams, which are full of Sanskrit words. Next one. I have a short video here to demonstrate. Can you play that, sir? If you press it, that arrow comes. If you take it to the full screen, or otherwise, and if you press it, it comes. No, this way. Can you go to the direction? Okay. Video number 2. I have a short video of 2 minutes. The previous one. No, it should come. The arrow should come. Can you go to the video or the pen drive? I think I will stick to my time. This is a 2-minute video, and then I have another one for a little over 1 minute, and that's it. This is about 95 lines. I had only the first few lines here. Manikkavacagar also composed a lot of songs based on the folk songs of his time. Those tell us the kind of beat, the kind of songs that the folk people used at that time. Last 2 slides. Sir, I have another minute, just another minute. In that, about games and people, you can play the second one, please. people pounding grain and pounding. Turmeric was pounded in the Chidambaram temple, mixed with gold powder to sprinkle on royal visitors and also the deity and others on festivals. This is the folk song. Just 1 minute, shorter than the other. So they are all pounding to the rhythm. Pounding slow. Shows a lot of parallels between the Sanskrit way of thinking and the texts and the literature and the way the Tamil literature, both devotional poetry, literature and the serious treatises have moved. Thank you very much.